Thank you all very much for joining us today. We're going to talk about national digital strategies, and we're lucky to have great speakers today. By the way, we were going to bring with us the Prime Minister of Portugal, but he had something else, so we're not going to have him today. But I think we have Manuel Caldeira someplace around here, the minister. We have very big, great leader, BT, and then we have the largest bank in Russia, but we also have two political leaders. Mr. Kagame, who is the president of Rwanda, but who also is the chair of the Broadband Commission, and therefore somebody who's been promoting the more extensive dissemination of digital competencies and capacities. And I leave for last but not least our hostess, and when I mean hostess, I mean of the whole country, of the whole thing, you know, the president of the Council of Ministers of Switzerland, Doris Leuthard. Obviously, we're speaking about a power, a potential, and in some cases, a question that is perceived as a threat. Because when you're talking about the low-skilled working force of many countries, you don't always have this reception, this open arms to the digital, because there is this question about robotics, and there's this question about displacement that is being discussed in practically every single, and which, by the way, was last year's main issue here in Davos. So we have also the issue being focused on, for example, in the G20. The Germans have launched a digital project that will be delivered by the leaders in the G20, except it's a very short time to deliver because of the elections and everything else. Already last year we did September rather than November, and this year we're going to do July, early July rather than November. So you're really having 4 or 5 months less to put together things, to put together papers, to do the thing, and therefore it's not going to be such a finished product, if you will. It's going to be more focused on how do you do digital for the productivity, mostly for the manufacturing system. But we in the OECD, by the way, have embarked on a long-term project, actually a 2-year project, to look at how digital affects and can affect the economies, people, education, health, and skills. And skills is a dividing line, because skills is where technology and digital can actually compete with the labor force, and at the same time, skills is the area which has the greatest potential in terms of delivering an improvement, and therefore allowing the labor force to have the necessary skills to deal with the new technology, is including the digital, which then can become, let's say, both the means and the ultimate goal of dealing better with the digital. But it's one of those things where you basically say, do I get on or not? No. It's inevitable. It's unstoppable. It's just moving on, and whether it's in banking systems, whether it is in broadband, or whether it is simply to make the wheels of a whole government work better, or whether you get to the sectors like education or, like I said, health, etc., that these things are absolutely just unstoppable, inevitable, and therefore one has to embrace them because we really do not have an alternative. The Germans started calling it what 4.0. And now it became that became viral. Now everybody's talking about 4.0. It was also Klaus Schwab that wrote his book about the new revolution, the new industrial revolution, the new transformation revolution, etc. We have incorporated that into our PIAC, our adult skills program for, again, an integral element of productivity and competitiveness, productivity being under fire practically in every single one of the countries. So let me just start by asking some of the members here some questions about the issue that brings us together today. Let me start by President Leuthard. Switzerland's challenges are rather different, let's say, those faced by Russia or those faced by Rwanda. Switzerland is among the most advanced economies in the OECD in terms of digital development. And you've been directly involved in Switzerland because you were in the economy and you were in a number of others, plus having been the president before. So I suppose you feel quite comfortable in your chair as president this time around. What is Switzerland seeking to achieve with this digital strategy this time, in 2017 and beyond? And what you have learned from the experience so far, the pitfalls, the risks, but also some of the opportunities you may have found in the process.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, I think for governments, the approach was for a long time, we looked a little bit what happens in the industry, what happens in the different sectors, and we discussed what is the role of governments. Have we to regulate? What have we to regulate? Have we people, are they well prepared? Our SMEs, are they aware of the changes? And now we have, last year we developed a multi-stakeholder approach because, you have to really cover all sectors of your economy. You have to bring in the private sector. You have to bring in science. You have to bring in also your education system. And we made a change of paradigm because so far I think it's available for all industrialized countries. I think we focused more on data protection for many years, and now we have to change for a data policy so that we are aware all these data flows, all these data are a new fortune, have a value. And how can we also here deal with what is possible, what has to be controlled? Data flows, we have to enrich the citizen, the simple citizen who must be the owner of his private data. How do we do that? And also the WEF now have an initiative where Switzerland is very much engaged. Is this some element of WTO, of future trading agreements? What is the role of WIPO on intellectual property rights? So I think here we must be aware that our citizens feel well with all these changes. And finally, what also President Kagame said, a lot of ministers are talking about self-driving cars and smart houses, but finally this needs huge investments in broadband infrastructure. That's the base for all these changes. And last but not least, how can we really also educate our people, especially the not very skilled people, that they don't feel I'm again a loser. So first I was a loser in globalization, now I'm a loser in digitalization. This seems to me really a threat, and here we must be very aware of these bad feelings, and Switzerland tries to involve there also our citizens from the beginning, that we really change our education system and they have a profit from the beginning of all these new nice gadgets on the market.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, President. President Kagame, you are the chair of the Broadband Commission, which brings together authorities, also practitioners, some of the companies that are doing the broadband and who are operating, but also the international organizations that are trying to organize the trade. as a tool of development, for leapfrogging development stages, for reducing the distance, and for reducing the time that it takes for an emerging developing country like yours to move into modernity, to move into better standards of living, etc. And of course, now that this is an SDG target of the Sustainable Development Goals, that's goal number 9 and target 9C. Very specific. The question is, there's still about, 4 billion people offline. We're not talking about something which is generalized. How are you looking at it as a leverage instrument, as a lever for development to accelerate the process in your own country and, of course, in the region you know better, which is Africa?
Well, in a sense, we are starting from a very low base in Rwanda or in Africa, but we have nonetheless started, and we want to move as fast as possible, knowing the benefits, even with the dangers of ICTs, but we know the benefits outweigh the dangers, and the dangers can be managed, and we focus on that. Let me start by saying we also believe from the outset that innovation will always be driven by the private sector. But government has a role to play in as far as integrating technologies generally, but also digital technology into policy and understanding how this affects the general population. So the social implications are well understood. So we have to work between the private sector, the drivers of innovation, and the government to make sure that the benefits are accessed, but also are distributed equitably among the people that we lead. That's where we come from. And we started by investing in a couple of areas. One, it is the infrastructure, as the President of Swiss Federation has already mentioned. But infrastructure alone is not the way to go, because the infrastructure that is put in place has to be used by the citizens and serve the public servants as well. And therefore,
make it available, but also
make it available
to make people aware of the existence of the possibility.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You also, in our case, where we have started from, we also have to mobilize, educate, simplify, the understanding of what benefits ICTs bring, and also change the culture in a sense, because once you have taken the national development strategy and integrated that with the digital strategy as a way of increasing productivity, as a way of efficiency, as a way of driving the economy to grow for the benefit of the people, cultures have got to change, because it comes with openness, things are out there, and maybe some people have not been used to that. So we have found that working together with the private sector, with all levels of our government, things are gradually changing, and the investments that have been made in the area of infrastructure have definitely created a lot of benefits, and we are seeing more understanding, more access to information that people did not have before, and therefore that has increased the productivity of all the processes the government has gone through.
Mm-hmm. let me go to our private sector participants. Gavin, you are one of the leaders in the industry here. And at the same time, there's a lot of demands on the industry itself, but also on the companies that are leading the charge. And of course, governments have sometimes maybe inflated expectations about what can be delivered by the technology. They probably think it's like a panacea, that everything can be resolved, etc. How do you look at this process, the interaction between the industry, progress in the technology itself, and then the applications down to the economy, to the business, etc., even to supporting the governments themselves?
Well, digital strategy, digital policy, a digital framework, I think is as critical in the developed world as the developing world. It is a fantastic enabler for prosperity, for social mobility, for education, and if got right, it can fundamentally change the prospects of any country. I think in the UK, the government over the last 10, 15 years have done a very good job of this, both Conservative and Labour governments, so it's been both sides of the party, if you like, both sides of government, promoting a digital agenda and having the right dialogue with industry, having the right dialogue with content providers to ensure that actually the outcomes for customers, for citizens are very good. And you can see that in the numbers. The UK has the most developed internet economy in the G20. Over 10% of the economy is dependent or it relates to the internet. E-commerce is over twice what it is per capita than in the US, which is something people don't know. So it's whatever they've been doing something right.
Yeah.
And if I sort of reflect on it, there's probably three things I would call out in particular. One is regulate to promote investment and competition, but in two things in particular. Only intervene in the places where there is truly a bottleneck, number one. And number two, make that technology agnostic. So focus on the outcomes around particularly coverage and speed and resilience, but not predefine which technology can be used. That, governments are not technology specialists. The industry should be playing that role. They should be in the position where they're continuing to innovate and drive new standards. And if they do, there are quite remarkable things that can be achieved on the same basic infrastructure. So I think the government have done a good job of that overall, but occasionally in the UK they'll take a particular shine to one technology. But it should be the outcomes they're focused on. What do they want in terms of coverage? What do they want in terms of speed? I think the second thing is around adoption and inclusiveness and take-up. So take-up of the internet is very high in the UK, but there are two groups in particular that are important, I think, to call out. One is there are still 12 million of the 65 million citizens in the UK that aren't online, and they do skew older, and it's important that government promotes the sort of programs that help the older parts of the population encourage them online and not see it as such a threat or a barrier. And then the second area is around, I would say, around tech education, tech literacy. So the government made tech literacy and coding part of the curriculum in primary schools.
Very important. Coding.
And that is because they recognise...
It's a new language.
Exactly. The same as reading, writing, and...
It's a lingua franca.
Tech.
Yeah.
And so it was a very smart move. It was the Conservative government a few years ago and we're beginning to see the benefits now. Because in every country there's a shortage of people with tech skills,
Yeah.
and it's no longer going to be part of just a few people's jobs. If you look forward, it's going to be part of everybody's job. So we've been helping them teach the teachers how to code through BT, and in the last 2 years, we've been able to help 28,000 teachers learn how to code, and then teach over 1 million kids over the last 2 years, and that'll be 5 million within the next 3. And that's really important, and it's important because it also promotes tech literacy to boys and girls, so that they both see it as, both genders see it as a career that they want to get into. Because that is a particular issue later in life, that it skews very male, and that's not seizing the full potential of technology. Then the final thing, and I'll stop on this, is around safety and security, and it's a theme I think we'll all touch on.
That's an issue I wanted to pick up with you a little later, but you might as well do it now.
Just to headline it, it's on security. It's a very dynamic picture, and it's critical that the government play a role in making the network safe, promoting safe behaviour online, and ensuring that the networks are secure. So it is both it's an education responsibility on one hand, but it's also working particularly with all the players across the value chain to ensure that the networks are safe, resilient, and able to respond if they are attacked. And that's a role that government need to play, I think, and in the UK, I think they've done a very good job.
So you're basically, you declare yourself kind of satisfied that, in the case of the UK at least, the government has been conducive, or at least has not blocked progress, but at the same time that in those areas that do not depend on the companies themselves, the government has been, let's say, constructive in terms of allowing for education to be spread, etc.
Yeah, very much so.
So they are aware. They're aware.
They're very aware. Nobody's complacent. We're not sitting here smugly thinking how good we are. We're looking forward and recognising that if we don't keep evolving as a country, and particularly with Brexit coming shortly, in theory anyway, that we will we'll lose this very good position we have when it comes to using the internet as a way of promoting both social policy but also prosperity.
Good. Well, maybe we'll get back to the Brexit question in a moment. But Kagame'S, you run and have been running for quite some time now, besides being a Minister of the Economy and the trusted advisor to the President and the Prime Ministers, and now you turn into a banker, and now you're the largest banker. And of course, you work, bankers being, by the way, in terms of leading edge users of the technology and using, but at the same time, you are working in the context of a national digital strategy, which of course is set by the Russian authorities. And at the same time, you are in a position, perhaps a unique position, where you can also actually help define and shape the national digital strategy by being a very important user and being so important that you can basically then suggest ways in which the broader public can benefit in the exchange with the practitioners or the technologists, etc. How do you see your role there, and at the same time, what has been your experience in that sense?
Thank you very much, Angel, for your question. And I would like to speak about these two questions. The first of all, I can say that we have a great opportunity in the current situation to improve our states.
Yeah.
Because such a huge opportunities which we have now, I think we have a unique moment now. If you look at the share of GDP, which we can call the digital part of the economy, the largest part of digital economy has Great Britain now. It's around 10 or 11%.
No, you're telling us that
it's nothing.
leading.
But now you are number one in the world. If you speak about the Russian situation, we have only 4%. If you look at 2025, this share will be around 50%. It means that all participants which will be successful in the way of digital transformation, they can get enormous advantages. And if you speak about the banking sector, it's one of the most conservative industries in the world. But what we can see in banking now, that it's a 100% disruptive situation, because in the next 5 years we can see such a lot of changes in the banking sector that we can never see during the last 50 years. And now we work very hard on the way on digital transformation of our company. We are one of the largest European banks. We have 130 million customers in Russia and Europe and Turkey. And if you look at our future, now we have 330,000 employees, but in 2025, I think we will have half of them. And if you look at our services, now we have a lot of offline services. And 98% of our relations with corporates, we make digital. But only 50% of our operations with private customers now have in the digital area. But I think in 8 years it will be around 100%. And if we speak about the speed, I think we must be prepared for real-time services, and we must be prepared for that. What we must do for that? And in our case, we must change our technological platform, because if you speak about the bank now is a big IT company. But if you look at our existing IT systems, this is the old legacy and very complicated systems. And we can't compete with such a very important competitors like Google or Facebook or WeChat in China, because they're very fast, they're young companies, and they have very good skills on the digitalization. Now we can say that without creation the new platform, with our self capacities, it's impossible to be a digital company.
Mm-hmm.
And
you can hire Gavin to help out.
I'd be very happy to.
And the second question is the mobility, because the customers would like to have an online service. And if you speak about Russia, we have 150 million people, but 200 million mobile phones.
Yeah.
And 60% of them, this is the smartphones. And this is a very good conditions for making mobile business with them and making mobile and online services for them. And it's impossible to be successful in this way if you don't connect your services with the governmental services. That's why we're working together with government to build a new national digital strategy. I think it's a good examples around the globe, but one of the best examples which I have seen, this is the Singapore. This is a program. They are running the second program, five years long program, which they call Smart Nation. And it's a very good example about the collaboration between private sector and the government. Because without this type of collaboration, it's impossible to build national digital strategy, and we can't say that we can build a digital environment.
Okay.
And I would like to speak about the last question. What kind of gaps we have, and what kind of problems we can have in a few years, in the next future. First of all, we must work very hard with the educational system, because now we speak about 3 different types of skills if we speak about the digital economy. The hard skills or professional skills. I think that we have enough experienced leaders and enough experienced employees in our companies. But the second one, this is the soft skills, based on the emotional intelligence, collaboration, problem solving, and the
Leadership.
many others. Leadership, yeah.
Social skills.
And I think it's a big gap. For example, in my company, it's a first goal, and now we work very hard with many great universities for establishing the special programs to improve the soft skills in the companies.
Yeah.
And the third part of these skills, this is the digital skills. And if you look at the professional education now, nobody teach the students of the digital skills. But I think it's universal skills which will be very important for each professional, independent from the area or industry in which they're involved now. And the last topic about the threats. I think that if you speak about our experience, the first problem in our relations with the government, this is the over-regulation. And for example, now we have such a disruptive technologies like blockchain or virtual currencies. If you speak about with the central banks about the virtual currencies, they try to regulate it immediately and say, excuse me, could you have a little bit more time for understanding what kind of outputs we can get from these new technologies, and when the technologies will be ready, then you can regulate it, but not before.
Okay.
And the last topic, this is the cybersecurity. This topic I think very important for all of us. Now in our practice we have 98% of cyber crimes, and it was 100% changed during the last 10 years. It's impossible to have efficient organization without big part of cybersecurity, and we need to build a special mechanisms to international collaboration.
Okay.
On that.
Right. I was going to address that particular question in the second round, but I'm happy that you did that. President Kagame, do you find that the international scene is propitious, pertinent, appropriate, conducive, cooperative with your aims to disseminate the question of digital in a country like yours? Or do you find that there are impediments, there are blockages, technological, political, financial, or otherwise? What would you need, what would you ask for on behalf of the developing countries in the world to say, make the most out of the progress on the digital sphere for the purpose of accelerating development in your countries?
Well, I think you will find the problems almost in everything. So this is not without problems. But I think we focus mainly on the solutions and the benefits, and then try to get rid of the problems. But we have found good understanding with many partners who have come together, whether it is governments or the private sector, because much as we want to make these investments in these technologies, it's not necessarily done in a way of just giving anything for free. People try to work around business models that with the investments made, in many cases you can have returns, but try to do it in a certain way that it becomes affordable to the majority of people, especially when we have been talking about connecting the unconnected, the big number you mentioned of close to 4 billion that have not been connected. We are therefore talking about a huge potential. We are talking about a big number that, if connected, in the end, they will actually contribute to the good returns, looking at the numbers involved without necessarily having to make it very expensive for people to access these technologies and use them for their daily activities. So there has been a lot of cooperation. I'll give you a quick example. In our case, after making the investments in infrastructure, we have laid fiber, over 4,000 kilometers of fiber across the country, connecting all the districts or different parts of our country. We have entered into a partnership. This is why I was talking about public-private partnership that could benefit this kind of strategy. We partnered with Korea Telecom, and they have helped the country develop. We now have 4G LTE network in the country, which we are rolling out across the country. And what we did with them was, therefore, to make sure that the other providers have access to this at wholesale prices given by Korea Telecom, so that all other providers did not have to make the kinds of investments in the infrastructure, but rather one entity made the investments and the others buy wholesale from, and that made it cheap, made it accessible, and we are seeing very good progress. In fact, if you look at where the country was in 2005, we only had 3% of our people having access to internet. Now in 2016, last year, we have 33%. There was that huge leap in front.
Big leap, yeah.
In fact, in 2020, we are expecting to have universal access on that. So I think there has been cooperation, there has been good understanding, and there has also been increased awareness of our people, not just in Rwanda, in the region of East Africa, where we have also forged partnerships among ourselves.
When we're talking about development and aid and support, etc., we're normally thinking about water wells, and you normally think about schools, you normally think about, the sanitation and things like that. Would you go out there and say, I'd like to get support from you on broadband, on access, on technology? Do you find responsive? Do people understand that you're trying to move a country like Rwanda into the 21st century, and therefore that the concept has to change in terms of what they have to provide?
Absolutely. I think there is increased understanding, and people also have been changing their attitudes, exactly shifting from aid we get in Africa being that of just, fixing
grants for specific projects.
Yes, and I think we've been talking long term. We are saying, no, we need to make the investments that will last, that can be scaled up to, touch people's lives long term, and also enable people to actually be able to provide what they want for themselves.
Okay.
And we have seen a big difference, especially with the international institutions. We have gone to the World Bank, or we have gone to the African Development Bank, or even partners, countries like Switzerland and other countries. When we go to them and say, we have this project, this is the way it is going to work. And we can even agree with them and say, let's put in place a mechanism to measure the progress so that people providing their money are assured that the money did what it
There'll
was.
be accountability and
Abs-
also, yes.
Absolutely. So there is good response we are finding with the partners.
Doris Leuthard, whenever we speak about Switzerland, we feel that all the problems are solved. That is a kind of some kind of a place out there where people are happy and they obviously not necessarily the case, but in this relatively let's say cutting edge society of Switzerland, cutting edge economy, what it is that you feel that keeps you awake at night vis-a-vis the technological development, digital, etc., that may be removing the cutting edge in terms of advantage? Because at the same time, you have to remain always on the cutting edge to be competitive.
Yes.
It's a relatively small economy, very open economy, therefore very dependent on being able to use the best and the latest in order to stay in that situation. How do you're running the country now? How do you look at that? And how is this challenging you?
Well, first, I'm very happy that you think we have no problems. So, my list is.
No, I just said that this was the impression. I mean, like the Costa Ricans like to say, we are the Switzerland of Latin America,
Yes.
things like that. So everybody says they're the Switzerland of someplace, So
Even the Swiss.
But we want to tell them that the president of Switzerland loses sleep over these things too.
Well, we would like to be also on the top rankings on innovation and on competitiveness. So I think what Hernan Greff mentioned.
I'm going to go to the audience immediately after, so please prepare. Yes.
For me, one question really is what have we to regulate and where we can really wait and see. And in our strategy, we position Switzerland as enabler. So the government really has to care. I think there's a consensus about education and research, public money. Here we have a role to play. I think here Switzerland will doing fine, because I think especially with vocational training in this sector of people who have not an academic level, here we have to improve their skills, and here we will focus. Second, what really drives me also a data policy, because I don't see a lot of competition between companies. We have Google, we have Facebook, some big companies who are quite champions, and they got my data. They have such a knowledge, such visibility on every citizen of the world, and I would like to have more competition, more companies which I can trust first, and which I can really say, okay, even if they get my data, there's no nonsense, there's no abuse, and I have also something to say. And here, I think here also we have a political level of how can we create also a framework on data policy that the owner, the simple citizen of these data, has at least some control or must agree on safeguards, or must agree on
You can have a referendum, which is a very Swiss solution.
I don't recommend referendum.
That will be. This must be. Internet knows no borders, so this must be an international solution. Now, even when UK looks for a national solution, this does not work on the long. So here we need, I think, really a comprehensive international framework we can trust. And we know cyber security is an item. We have a lot of hackers. We have secret services from some powers which attack our systems, which attack a lot of data. It's an industrial interest and a political interest. So here I think also companies as well as our politicians must work together to have this security of data, security of of our citizens finally also. And I like to see more competition here, because when it's only 2-3 big players, the risk of abuse is much higher than when we have, there's some companies who have the skills, the knowledge, and the technologies.
Yeah. Okay. Now, over here, and lady over there. For the time being, these first three.
Yeah, thank you very much. Neil Dunn from BT. My question is for President Kagame. Firstly, congratulations on your fibre programme. It's a model, I think, for the developing world. I'd like to ask you what you think we need to do, not to connect the next billion people of that 4 billion, but actually the last billion. Because I think when we've actually democratised things in the past, any other utility that we've fully democratised, we've seen social impact and economic value unleashed in a way that we couldn't even imagine. So what do you think we need to do to connect the last billion first? And how do you think philanthropy and markets can actually work together with government to achieve that?
President Kagame.
Definitely, I've said this before, cooperation is extremely important. Governments, the private sector, philanthropy, and even citizens want to contribute to this. They want to contribute when they have understood what there is in it for themselves. But the most important thing in this coming together, governments have to play their role as well as the private sector plays their role. Governments will have to make sure that we are thinking about, indeed, connecting people. Therefore, in our national development strategy and the plans to execute that, we have to integrate it in every sector of our society and make sure that every stage we take is actually taking care of this. And in fact, make it part of the budgetary process of any country and include that this is embedded in every sector that we consider for this budgeting. In fact, that's how Rwanda came to think about, for example, investing in the fiber across the country, as I said earlier on. But that is not enough. How do you take it to homes, to premises, to rural areas, and also thinking about how people are going to afford that, and how, as long as they have access, they need also to be able to afford that. So the conversation that goes on between government and the private sector, and then the philanthropy bringing in what they are good at and contributing to that makes a huge difference, as we have seen in our own case.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam.
Thank you. My question is also to His Excellency. My name is Nancy. I'm from the Dar es Salaam Hub, a global shaper from the Dar es Salaam
From the where?
Hub. I'm a global shaper from the Dar es Salaam Hub.
You're a global shaper.
Yes, sir.
Good.
My
That's a
question
good
is
profession. A PhD in global shaping.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. I couldn't avoid it.
My question is to His Excellency. So I teach kids how to code back at home, but then the problem that we face is that our education system has not been reformed to match any type of digital strategy or approach to help train our kids to be aligned and also be more competitive long term. What are your thoughts, and what is it that we can do immediately to be able to take that leap?
It's about education, and let me then also ask you about that, because again, in the cutting edge and in the developing country, the question of education and skills. Please.
Well, again, it's the same thing. Education brings government. Government is the main supplier of the public good. When it comes to education, government is indispensable. But the private sector comes in. Philanthropy comes in. They always want to help. They also want to help in these areas, especially for education, because in the end, the education benefits just not the individual being educated or the government making sure that the citizens are educated. It also benefits the private sector when it comes to the skills that are required in different parts of the
So a
private
mismatch
sector.
between the skills necessary and the skills that are being demanded.
Yes, we have to make sure that these align and we are really providing
Okay.
what the market is asking for.
Okay. Doris, do you feel the Swiss are duly equipped with the right skills in order to face a music?
Well, I think we have a huge density on mobile phones or on all these
Yeah.
equipments, but the skills are, that's really, I think, also my skills are underdeveloped. I'm another generation, sorry. That's it, that's also. And
Yeah.
I see a good example was we had some.
But you're not looking for a job.
For the
You
moment,
got a
not.
pretty secure one, you know.
For the moment, but I have a good example. My mother, for example, she's 84, and she likes to be in contact with her kids and therefore, well, I bought her also an iPad, and she learned this from my 7-year-old sons and daughters and other people. So I think there's interaction between a young generation and the elderly generation.
Yeah.
And in our education system, our teachers normally are also another generation. So I think here we have to also look for young people who educate the kids.
So you have, and then you go like coding, like Gavin said. You know,
Yeah.
Now it's part of the curriculum. Writing code is crucial. The Germans are no longer exporting cars; they're exporting code with wheels. You know, there's a, in a way. So, well, yes, I mean that is actually the case. So it's a big transformation. We have 1, 2, and 3, and I think that'll be it. Please.
My name is Augustine Edwards. I'm an editor at the newspaper in Chile.
Bad gender balance, anyway. But yes, we go.
My question is really to the panel as a whole, with regards to what do they feel with, in terms of guaranteed minimum quality in the broadband service.
Okay.
Drugstores can't sell old medicine, which is ineffective. Food stores can't sell rotten fruit. But in broadband, we allow for variations in quality, which is huge.
Okay.
And my question is, how do they feel about having a minimum
Gavin,
standard?
I think probably you should address that one first, and perhaps, I don't know if Gurman has something to say.
Well, it's an interesting question because the government in the UK in the last year has defined that and said everybody in the UK, and the UK has some quite different geographies, and it includes all the islands around the UK as well. Anybody across the UK can demand a minimum of 10 megabits per second by 2020. Now, by the end of 2017, 95% of the UK will have... thanks,
Artificial
Siri.
intelligence.
Gee, they're cyber. Cyber security. You're being hacked.
By the end of 2017, 95% of the UK will have speeds of up to 30 megabits or more.
Okay.
And
And that'll be widely available. Is it?
Across, so it's the issue is that last 5% because they're the most remote parts of the UK, and they've established that at 10 megabits per second you can do high definition video, and when they map the sort of consumption versus speed, that's when it begins to flatten off. That said, my own feeling is, and the sort of modelling we do, is that actually that will go up quite rapidly over time, and we're certainly building towards something that runs into the hundreds. Rather than into the tens as the minimum speed.
Let me just make a comment there, or part of the question. There is this question of average, and say most of the population, 90% of the population doesn't need the cutting edge speed. So should you worry more about that, or is it that you have to provide both? The cutting edge is crucial to make progress in the cutting edge sciences and business and whatever discoveries, but there you have to provide for the most. Where do you, is there a trade-off, or do you have to address both?
You have to address both, and it's people say, well, actually, do you need the bandwidth? And there's, in truth, at the moment, you probably don't.
It's a lot of it that is there.
However, if you
Yeah.
look at how networks are being used in the future, you will be able to do everything you, I think, need to stream over around 100 megabits per second, because the technology around streaming is improving all the time, so you'll have multiple Ultra HD pictures through 100 megabits per second. The reason you will need more is because you will download huge files across the network. It's downloading comes
So
back.
data becomes
Spike. So
heavy.
You were talking about cars, a big download to your electric car. It's a piece of software, several gigs of data. You know, the network needs to be able to cope with these peaks in demand, and that's why you have to build it to be a lot more than the average speed.
so resilient.
Resilience as well as another.
Yeah,
Is another
resilient, but also big.
Yeah.
Just big capacity. Any other thought on this? We'll go back to the other
Yeah,
question.
I think that the Internet of Things, which we see now, that the forecast is that in 2020 it will be 20 billion things switched with the Internet. It means that we need 100% new infrastructure. And if we would like to make online services, we need broadband internet in I can't say if you speak about Russia, it's if you speak about our Far East, we need 9-hour flights from
Yeah.
Vladivostok to Moscow. It's impossible to build high-speed internet in each village. Yeah? But I think for 80-90% of the population, we must rethink how we can organize on the right way the whole digital infrastructure.
Especially with the explosive numbers that you just mentioned in your initial intervention, where you're going to go from 4% to 50-something percent in a relatively short period of time. Let me go over here.
Thank you, Secretary General. I'm Fadi Shehadeh. I'm Senior Advisor to Professor Schwab on Digital Matters.
Nobody's perfect. It's okay.
Nobody's perfect.
It's okay. We still love you.
I just want to focus on an important element of national digital strategy or policy, as this panel is focusing on that. To date, most work on national digital policy has been about the infrastructure. And that's okay, because the infrastructure is actually bounded by the country's borders. But now, all digital is about data. And data is transnational. It doesn't understand borders.
Mm-hmm.
The platforms that are running the data for the world are transnational. So now I ask the panel, how do we deal with the paradox of countries wanting to establish national digital policies when the real assets are transnational? 84% of the S&P assets are now intangible. So how do we do that?
Let me ask our government, and perhaps if you guys feel that you have any comment to make, because it may also be an appropriate moment to speak about the Brexit implications, transnationality of the problem. President Lothar.
Well, I think that's a good question. Well, we need national policies because what was said about the quality of the basic infrastructure, this must be qualified on national level. But it's clear, as we have these services-oriented economies with a lot of cross-border linkages, here we must have an international solution. That's why I think WTO, WIPO should be involved. OECD, sure, you will be the research after WIPO. And I think also we have the UN Internet Governance Forum. So who cares about these governance issues? We will have in Geneva end of this year an important also conference, and therefore I think these networking cooperation, regional cooperation, but also then on a global cooperation is needed. Not only on researchers, on enterprises, but also on in the banking sector it's key.
President Kagame, national against multinational, transnational, everything is now cross-border. How do you deal with that?
Very true, but I don't think we necessarily have to do away with the national strategies. but we can integrate national strategies to get to where we want to be.
Yeah.
And so it's really a question of building blocks to build something. The whole has to come together through different pieces.
Exactly.
So that, because we see around, some nations may not have those strategies.
Okay.
So, but they would think about doing that in order to simply go to that level where the integration has taken place. I think it's not either or. I think we have to make sure that we encourage nations to develop their strategies, but we have also got to encourage globally.
Like
for
you do in the
nations to
Broadband
come
Commission.
together. Absolutely.
Yeah. I'm afraid this is going to be the last word because we run out of time, and I received the, let's see, like that, when you cut your throat, that means you can't do much more. But on the transnationality of the issue, and therefore perhaps some implication about the Brexit that you mentioned.
And I've got to sum this up in 30 seconds. If I...
Oh, well, 37.
Look, it is one of the Brexit issues, no question about that. I mean, one of the many good things about the European community has been the digital strategy and being able to move data around countries. And as increasingly as businesses moved into the cloud, where the data resides is not necessarily in the country. And the more public the cloud services are, often it can be split between many different countries, wherever the data center is. So this is a very, very important issue. It is key to the Brexit negotiations, in my view. And the issue of how we maintain free flows of data in whatever negotiations.
Are they even focusing on that now? I mean, they're talking about refrigerators and they're talking about things like that. But they are talking about banks, by the way.
I'm confident.
But are they talking about the cloud? How are they going to share the cloud?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm confident this is going to be an issue that is pertinent to the negotiations.
Yeah. Well, listen, let's give a big round of applause to our panelists.